In JavaScript we have 2 and 3 but what is the difference between them? I start from the strict equal comparison. If I compare 10 number and 10 string using the 3 we will get false. But if I use 2 we get true. And this is because when we use 3 we compare the data considering the current type of the item. Our first item is 10, which is a number, and we compare it to the 10, which is a string. So the data is the same. We have 10 and 10, but the type is different, and this is the reason why we have false. When we use 3 we get true only if both the data and the type are equal. So if I compare 10 number with the 10 number, I get true. But when we use 2 at first it converts the data types into the same one, and then it compares the data. So if we have a number and a string, it converts the string to the number. So our first item is a 10, which is a number, and our second item is a 10, which is a string. So if we use 2 it converts the string into a number. And then it compares 2 items. So we see that 10 is equal to 10, and this is the reason why this expression gives true. So when we compare 2 tens, it seems to be logical, but sometimes it is difficult to predict the result. So for example, I can compare 5 with the string 0, 5, and anyway, this is equal to true. So we have a number and a string, and we use 2 operator. So it converts the string into the number. So we have 0, 5, but then the compiler knows that the first 0 is not important, so we can remove it. And eventually we compare 5 to 5, which is true. It also works if we compare 5 to a decimal number, like 5.000. So in this case, the compiler also drops these zeros, and eventually we compare 5 to 5. But if we compare 5 to 5a, if you will try to convert this string into the number, you will find that in the math, you don't have a number 5a. And this is the reason why it will be converted into a none. None means not a number, and it has the data type of number. So every time when you try to convert any string into the number, and this number doesn't exist, it becomes none. And now we see that 5 is not equal to none, and this is the reason why we have false into the console. With numbers, we don't see all the problem of 2 but now let's look to the Boolean. We can compare true and 1, and if you use 2 operator, it will be equal to true. So again, we don't understand why it is equal to true. So if you use 3 you don't have this problem, because again, 3 compares value and the data type. But let's return back to 2 If you use Boolean and a number, it converts everything into the Boolean. So we convert number 1 to the Boolean. But Boolean can be only true and false. How to decide what it will be? If you want to convert a number to the Boolean, there is a simple rule. We convert 0 to the false and all other numbers to the true. So 1 is not a 0, and this is the reason why we convert it into the true. And then we compare true and true. So they are the same, and this is the reason why the result is true. So if you try to compare true and 0, you will get false, because we convert 0 to the false value. So what happens if we compare Boolean and string? Again, we convert strings to the Boolean. So if this is 1, it is the same as converting it into the number. So we just remove the quotes and we see the number 1. And then we know that this is not 0, so we can convert it into the true. And again, both these elements are the same. So this is the reason why we have true in the console. But there are more weird examples. So if we use 2 and if we compare false and empty string, we get true. So this is just how compiler converts the empty string. And there are also other examples. So all items that create the space, for example, /n is the same as pressing enter on your keyboard. So it creates a new line. And if we compare this string and the 0, it is also true. We can compare false with as many spaces as we want, and it will anyway be equal to true. So now you can see how much problems it can lead, and only one way to prevent these weird results is to use 3 But actually, there is one exception where 2 can be useful. In most of the languages languages, if we don't have any data, we have the value null. But in JavaScript, we have another nullish data type, which is undefined. So for example, I create a new variable age and I don't assign any value to this variable. And then if I log this variable to the console, you see undefined. But there are cases where it might be equal to null. For example, if we ask age from the user by using the function prompt, this function sends a pop-up where we can write a value. And here, if I press cancel, you will see null in the console. And for example, I want to create a script that will return this prompt again and again if user doesn't provide any value. So for example, I have this program where I ask the age from the user and then I have a while loop. And until my age is equal to undefined, I will throw the same prompt again. And if we have any value that is not equal to undefined, we log it to the console. In this case, if I click cancel, now we see null in the console. And this is because in JavaScript, null is not equal to undefined if you use free equal operator. If you try to compare null and undefined, you will get false. But if you use toEqual operator, it is equal to true. Also, we don't have any weird examples. So for example, if we compare null and 0, we will have false in the console. So, and this is the reason why for this script, we can use toEqual operator. And in this case, if user doesn't provide any age and press cancel, we throw this pop-up again until it provides any value. I can click cancel several times. And then I write a number, for example 10. And now you see this number in the console. But even in this case, you can write the same program using the free equal operator. And for that, you need to write a little bit longer expression where age is strictly equal to undefined or age is strictly equal to null. This program works absolutely the same, and this is absolutely valid. Especially for beginners, this condition is much more preferable. Now I will quickly show you what happens with arrays and objects. If we try to compare an empty array to another empty array using the toEqual sign, we have the false. And the same result we have if we try to use free equal sign. But in this case, we also have a warning that this condition will always return false, since JavaScript compares objects by reference, not value. This is another topic, what is the reference and value, and I have a video on this topic. So again, let's return back to toEqual sign, and here it seems to be okay, but there are a lot of weird examples. So for example, empty array compared to 0 is equal to true if our array contains 1, which is a string, and then we will compare it to 1, which is a number, it will also be equal to true. There are many edge cases that can give you true when you don't expect it. With arrays and objects, you must not use toEqual operator. There is also one interesting edge case. If you try to compare not a number with not a number, no matter what kind of comparison you will use, free equal sign or toEqual sign, it will always be equal to false. So this is just a behavior of a not a number. Each not a number is unique and it is not equal to anything. So for example, I have a variable num and then I want to know, is it equal to none or not? In this case, you can't use comparison operators, and the valid way of checking if the variable is not a number is to use the object number with the method isNone where you pass your variable. And now you see that it gives true to the console. And finally, let's make a small quiz. You see 10 different console logs, and for each one you should write is it equal to true or false. After 5 seconds, I will show you the answers. So these are the answers. Thanks for watching.